Are you looking to simulate realistic physics in After Effects? If so, you're in the right place. In this video, I'll show you two powerful plugins that make it possible in real time: Newton 4 from Motion Boutique and the new Physim from Plug and Play. Now, this is not a sponsored video, so stick with me to the end as I share the pros and cons of each tool, along with my personal insights to help you decide which one is worth your time and money. To demonstrate these plugins, I'll be creating an animated poster for The Truman Show. If you haven't seen it, the movie follows Truman, a man who unknowingly lives his entire life inside a reality TV show. As he slowly discovers the truth, he seeks to escape his fabricated world. Yes, this is a spoiler alert for a 26-year-old movie, and I'll be creating the iconic final scene where Truman, played by Jim Carrey, sails to the edge of his world, crashing into the set and causing the title of the movie to fall down. Now, this is not exactly how the movie ends, it is just my personal director cut. Anyway, to save some time and have fun, we'll animate this using a 2D physics simulation engine in After Effects. For those of you who are new here, I'm Eran and I've been teaching After Effects for over 30 years, helping designers master the software and smooth out its rough spots. I'm also a huge fan of music, books and movies, and this animated poster is part of a passion project I've been working on. You'll find links to other tutorials down below, and feel free to drop a comment if you like to see more things like this. Now, let's dive in and start simulating the design. So we'll start with this composition, which consists of 3 layers, 1 text layer and 2 shape layers. This is a simple setup for a reason, and it's perfect for testing whether my idea works and experimenting with a few variations before evolving into something more complex, which is the nature of simulation. Every time you're going to get something which is a little bit different. It's also an ideal match for the Physim plugin, or more accurately, the Physim extension, since it currently only supports shape layers. So to be able to compare it later with Newton, I'll start by duplicating the entire comp, and then I'll return back to this version, and I'll go under Window and apply the Physim extension. Now in my case, this is already docked in my interface. You can of course move it to anywhere you like, but I think this is a great setup to start with. So the first thing that we need to do is click on Get in order to get the layers. Now this is just going to call those 2 shape layers. So before doing so, we'll need to convert the text layer. Notice it already has some animation, and I want this animation to be taken under account. So we need to convert this to a shape layer. And you can do it inside After Effects by right-clicking on the layer and then choose Create Shapes from Text. I'm going to rename this one Title, and for now, I'm just going to delete the text. Now again, this is not enough. If we want to simulate individual shapes inside the title, notice if I'll open it up and look under the contents, we can see that each one of the letters is now a different shape. We actually need to explode it or break it into those individual shapes. Now, unless you want to do it manually, which is time consuming, you can use a couple of scripts. I'll link them down below. My favorite one is the Mobar script, and I have a full hour exploring each one of those tools, which I believe are one of the best in the business. But for now, I'm just going to call the Mobar Shapes, which is going to allow me to select this shape layer and click on Separate Shapes to Layers. And this is going to explode those individual shapes into their own layers. And notice here in this comp that the animation is still maintained. All right, so now we are finally ready to get those layers and bring them over here. So I'll make sure to delete the title layer. This is the original one with all the layers. I don't need it to be part of the simulation. I'll select all the layers and I'll click on Get. And after a few moments, we're going to see the simulation starts to play. Now, currently, when we have complex shapes, I'll move the current time indicator, such as the boat, or the wave here, which is using the zigzag mathematical operator, the Physim plugin doesn't really render them nicely. So this is just something to bear in mind. I'll select the waves layer in this case, and with the properties panel, I can change its behavior. So instead of active, I'll change it to static. And once you modify something, the animation is going to preview again for you. I'll select the sailboat, and you'll notice that when I'll change something, for example, I'm going to change it from active to dormant, which means it will affect other layers when they're going to be collided with each other. And when I'll do it, the preview is going to start automatically playing. And now if I'll move this current time indicator, we have at least an outline that shows us the shape of the boat. All right, my timeline is 10 seconds long, and this is only previewing 4 seconds. So this is in milliseconds. So what I'll do is highlight this and change it to 10, and the simulation is going to start playing once again. I can also use the walls here. So I can set the left as well as the right wall, and these are just going to prevent those characters, those shapes, to go out of the screen. Now already this looks really nice and impressive, but we can play with it. We can select all the title elements, and we can change the restitution, which is another word for bounciness. So let's take this to, I don't know, 0.5. I'm not sure if those values make sense in terms of real world values, but this is what we have here. So just in case you're wondering, this is how it looks. And when you are doing this kind of stuff, you'll need to experiment until you get your desired result. So maybe I'll change the density as well as lower the friction. And let's see how this looks. I can return back to the sailboat, and I can change its density so it will have a bigger impact on those letters. And of course, you can also change the air resistance as well as attractor, which means you can magnetize or demagnetize layers to each other or from each other. And of course, you can also play with gravity as well as the wall friction and restitution. So a very easy plugin to work with, and most of the time it will show you a real-time preview. And if you're happy with what you see, wait until the simulation ends and then click on apply. And this is just going to create many null objects, which are all being the controller. So all the layers are now being parented automatically to those nulls. And it's also going to create this text data, which saves all the things that you do. So if you are going to return to this interface and change stuff, then you don't need to worry about it. But right now, if we're going to have a look over here in the After Effects composition, this is the result that we are getting from this really simple extension, which looks really nice, except of the fact that some of the letters here are jittering. Now, if you want to remedy this, let's say that for the S, I just want to find out where it is. In other words, I need to find the null object for it. And then I can press U to show the keyframes. And I can just select all of the keyframes from this point onward and delete them. So this letter is not going to jitter in its place so much. And of course, you can do it for other letters as well. And if you want, you can also enable motion blur for all the layers and render the comp. Now, again, as I told you, every time you're going to create those simulations, it's going to get something different. So here are 2 additional simulations that I've created from the same structure, from the same layers. This is one of them. You can see that in this case, I've modified few of the parameters, and what I got is that the ship, the sailboat, is pushing all of those letters to the left. I think it looks really cool. And then there is another one, which I think looks more or less like the one that we've created together. Now, to ensure a fair comparison, I'll use the same composition with Newton to see how it performs, and after that we'll dive into a more advanced version and explore ways to enhance it even further. Now, Newton can read all the layers that you have in your After Effects timeline, but just to compare it with what we've seen before, I'm going to repeat most of the steps, not all of them, because Newton has some surprise for you. So let me show you what I mean. So first, let's do some house cleaning. I'll close those two compositions, as well as close the Physim panel. And I'm also going to start with the same starting point. And this is the reason that I've duplicated this composition. I'll go to the beginning. I'll right click on the text, and then I'll choose create shapes from text, which is going to leave us with this title. Again, I'll name it title. And if we want, we can remove the text, or in this case, I'm just going to bring it underneath all the layers. Notice the eyeball is not active, meaning that Newton is going to ignore it. All right, so I'll go to the composition menu and select the plugin. And remember that I told you there will be a surprise. Here it is. Newton recognized that one of the layers, in this case the title, contained multiple shapes or masks. And it offers you the option to split it to individual shapes. So in this case, you don't need to invest in a third-party tool. I'll click separate. And after a few moments, we're going to see the Newton interface. Now, once inside Newton, if you want, you can just press play and see the simulation. Everything is just falling down by default due to the gravity factor over here. So what we need to do is define few things the same way we did with Physim. So I'll select the waves layer. Notice that it doesn't render it correctly, so we can't see the zigzag mathematical operator, but it's still going to work. I'll change it from dynamic to static, and then I'll select the sailboat and change it from dynamic. And now you have two options, either AE-matic, which is going to take under account the After Effects keyframes, or better, the kinematic option. Now let's try again. I'll press play and we can start to enjoy the simulation. All right, so this is one version. Let's go to the first frame. And we can, of course, use walls. So we can use the composition boundary as a left, right, or top and bottom walls. So with this defined, let's see how this works. All right, everything is crunching together very tightly. If we want to improve the accuracy, I'll pause the playback. We can go to the solver and we can set the collision tolerance to something maybe higher, as well as just make the sub-steps a bit more higher as well. And again, let's try to see how this works. I'm also going to limit it with a second wall on the right side. I think this is going to look a little bit better, although one letter skips away. So, of course, as before, we can select the letters themselves and we can change them as well. So let's reduce the friction and maybe enlarge the bounciness and try again. Nice. Maybe even more bounciness. Okay, this starts to look fun. So totally up to you, the way you want to control it. By the way, if you want to reset it, you can just tick over here and this is going to reset it to whatever it was before. So I think we'll split the difference. We'll do 0.5 in this case and try again. And as I told you, every time you are using those plugins, you're going to get a different simulation. All right, when you're happy, all you need to do is click render. Notice you can enable motion blur. Also notice that it will auto-load your simulation. And if you want, you can also save your simulation to an external file so you can move it to a different system. But this is something to bear in mind. In this case, I'm just going to render whatever I got over here. And once this is finished, it's going to automatically close the interface. And notice here in the project panel, we have a new sim, which is basically duplicating the original comp. So this comp doesn't have any simulation. It didn't get affected. If you want to see what you got from Newton, you need to open the sim_1 composition. So I'll maximize this and preview it so you can get a sense of how this works. And these are the basics of how to work with Newton 4. Now let's dive into a more refined example. While the initial idea worked, I didn't like that the movie title was visible from the start. I want the sailboat hitting the edge of the set to trigger the letters falling in a cascading style, striking both the sail and the stern. Yes, stern effects. This creates a small story and adds purpose to the animation. So to build it, I've used AI and generated the main image, then extended the background in Photoshop and used the title as a cookie cutter for the falling letters. As they will drop down, they will reveal the title underneath, and of course I also animated in After Effects the waves and added a simple reflection to the boat, so now we're ready to simulate the composition. Now, since Newton offers more options that I can cover in this tutorial, it's important to prep the elements for simulation and to keep things as efficient as possible. So first, I'm going to turn off any layer that doesn't need to be part of this scene. In this case, these are all the layers under the text, as well as the sailboat and its water displacement. And instead, I'll activate 3 shape layers that I've prepared earlier. So here's the breakdown. The horizon layer will act as our floor. The ship, in this case, is just a basic outline of the sailboat, and this will act as a collider for the falling letters. And the stick layer that I've created, which has 2 position keyframes, will trigger the simulation. Now, all of these layers begin exactly at 5 seconds, right after the sailboat hits the edge of the set. Now, to ensure Newton works smoothly, I'll trim this composition to this point by right-clicking on the work area and selecting Trim Comp to Work Area. Only then, I'll launch Newton 4 from the composition menu. As I told you before, with Newton, you don't need to select the layers manually. It will automatically include all the visible layers and will ignore the hidden ones. So this is a great starting point. And now let me show you how I've set it up. So we'll start with the horizon and we're going to set it to static, which is a non-moving body. By the way, you have keyboard shortcuts here. So if I'll press S, this is going to set the type to static. I'll do the same thing for the ship, and for the stick, I'm going to change it to an AE-matic, which will take under account the keyframes that I've created inside After Effects, but also influenced by physics. Now for the letters, notice that Newton recognized the label color, and this is something that can help you to work faster here. So if everything is the same label, you can press the letter C to select everything, and you can change the type together. So let's set it to dormant, which means that it will be inactive until another body will collide with it, making it, of course, a dynamic object. Now, you can also set the border of the comp if you like to. I'm just going to disable it in this case, and I'll preview to see how this works. So I think that we need to reselect the stick and change its density to something bigger, so it will have a larger effect. So let's go with 2.5, go back to the start and see if this works, and I think it does. And then it's totally up to you. If you want, you can reinitiate the walls. So let's enable the right wall. I think it looks a little bit nicer. And then I'll select again all the letters. So pressing C will select them, so I can modify them together. Let's change the bounciness to maybe 0.6, as well as introduce some randomization, which is this button. So if I'll click on it, we can set the minimum and maximum. So maybe a minimum of 0.2 and a maximum of 0.7 or 8. Let's click OK and see how this works. So again, go to the beginning. And now each one of those boxes, which represents the letters, will jump differently. Now you can also play with other settings to create a more natural physical simulation. For example, the velocity magnitude can help you to create some sort of anticipation. So we can either change it from here or click on the randomizer and tell the values to be between 1 and maybe 5. And for the velocity direction, make sure to change it to -90. And this will add a little bump before they start to fall down. So maybe I'm going to reduce it to maybe just 1. I don't need it to be so high. Just a slight anticipation will go a long way here. So maybe a value of 2. And of course, you can go to the solver and you can also make the collision tolerance a bit more higher to get better accuracy, as well as raise the sub-steps if you like, as well as control the gravity magnitude and direction. So this is totally up to you. I'll preview it again to see how this works. And if you are happy, as I am, you can just render it. This is going to close the interface. Remember, you'll need to continue with this composition. So let's double click and open it. And in this case, we need to bring all the layers that we've trimmed. So I'll go to the composition settings and I'll change it back to 10 seconds. I'm going to take all of the layers that I'm seeing here. So select all the layers and move them to the end. And then I'll go to the beginning. I don't need to see the shape layers anymore. These are all helper layers, but I will enable the visibility for the sailboat and the water displays, as well as for all the layers that I switched off. Select the last layer, select the sailboat. Make sure I'm at the beginning of the comp, hold down Option and press the opening bracket to trim them all to the start of the comp. And then I can preview it to check how this works. And of course, if we want to, we can make it even a little better by adding a drop shadow to the letters, as well as some audio treatment. And to save some time, I'm going to open up my themes folder and show you, just so you'll see another variation of the same thing. This is again without the audio, just so you can see that, every time that you are creating something, you may get different results. So in this case, this is without the right wall. But my final thing is something very similar to what I showed you. In this case, I also have an audio file here. So if I'll go to the beginning, maximize the frame and preview it, you can see how everything works together. Now this is just scratching the surface of what Newton 4 can do. It comes with a sample browser that showcases features like joints, triggers, teleportation effects, explosive dynamics, randomizers, and more. So I highly recommend exploring these features to get the most out of the plugin. But now it's time to summarize and conclude. So let's start with Physim. Physim is a versatile extension, especially impressive for version 1. It's great for After Effects users looking for a basic rigid body simulations, and it's quite affordable. However, it has limitations that you need to keep in mind if you are planning to rely on it as your primary simulation tool. If you're just starting out with 2D simulations and most of your work is based on shape layers, you'll find it very useful. That said, if you need support for more complex layer structures and more precise control over simulations with additional tools for fine-tuning, Newton is the better option. Newton excels in realistic physics simulations, and as long as you don't need 3D interactions, it's a powerhouse and my go-to tool. Just remember, Newton comes with a bit of a learning curve and might require some workarounds for certain interactions, for fluid dynamics, for example. It's possible, but not always straightforward. If you're interested in learning Newton in more depth, I have a full course over at LinkedIn Learning, and I'll link it down below. Thank you so much for watching this long tutorial and sticking around until the end. If you like to see how to simulate using an obscure but built-in effect in After Effects, click here or stand by as I simulate and assimilate you. Resistance is futile.